Here we have the beginnings of a forge. This is the brake drum. This was an old shipping crate that one of my woodworking tools came in it, but amazingly overbuilt, so I'm going to use it to make a forge. I'm going to mount the drum about right there. So let's get to work. This brake drum is cast iron, and I can't weld to that. So I'm going to have to come up with a different way of securing it. You can actually weld to cast iron, but you got to use a high nickel welding rod or wire, which I don't have, and it's kind of tricky. You got to preheat, and it's just not something I really need to do. What I'm going to do instead is just make a bracket that's going to go underneath and hold this. One thing that might be useful is a spark test, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see in the footage, but this here is cast iron, this is steel, and you can see the difference. I don't know if you can see, but I'm just getting little tiny sparks. They look like maybe 1/4 of an inch long, tiny little things, not much at all. And when I grind on the steel, I'm getting sparks all the way out to here, and you know, like you expect with grinding steel.
Good boy.
Pretty happy with how this forge is coming. The way I made this bracket, this whole unit here is loose, which is going to allow me, if I want to take it apart later and do some modifications. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a top on it. The top's going to overlap this plate, so it's going to hold that firmly in position, and then I'm just going to tack it in a few places. So if I ever wanted to take it apart, I do have to take the top off, but it'll just be a matter of cutting a few welds, then lift the lid, and I'm ready to go. I can take this out and do what I need to do. Now it's starting to look like something. So here's my blower. A little smaller than I was expecting, but you don't need a lot of air. It's better to have a dedicated blower like this than a hairdryer, which just doesn't have the static pressure. The nice thing about this too is I can adjust my airflow just by using that flap. It's nice and quiet. This thing works quite well. It really regulates the airflow very easily. I'm getting a lot of flow there, so I think that's going to be fine. So my thoughts on this forge: it's big and it's heavy. I'm planning on putting wheels on the base, so I'm going to be able to move it around easily. The other thing is, it doesn't have a clinker breaker, but I've got an unlimited supply of charcoal, so I don't plan on using coal in this ever. If I needed to, I could modify it, but I don't think that's going to be an issue. So I'm excited to fire this up and see how it goes. Problem is I don't have an anvil. That's next on the list. What I do have is a bunch of aluminum cans I'm going to melt. This should have no problem getting hot enough to do that. So it's getting dark, but I don't care. I want to fire this thing up. Here's my 2 muffins. This was the first one I poured, and I still had aluminum left over, so it doesn't have a bunch of dross on the top. This was covered in dross, that's why it looks so funky. Focus, will ya? There we go. And there is the pile of dross, which is just a bunch of dirt and ash and who knows what else. But yeah, that's pretty cool. Nice little chunk of aluminum there from aluminum cans. When I get my mill, I'll throw it on there and see if I can make something out of it.